How you doing, everybody? My name is Dr. Sammy BAYA. Please welcome back to my YouTube channel. How to use salt to deal with black magic and witchcraft according to the Bible. The use of salt in relation to black magic and witchcraft according to biblical traditions is not explicitly outlined in the Bible as a direct method for dealing with such practices. However, salt is symbolically significant in biblical texts and has been historically associated with purification, protection, and covenant. So in this video, I'm going to explore how these symbolic meanings might be interpreted in the context of confronting black magic and witchcraft. The symbol of purification. In biblical traditions, salt is often used as a symbol of purification. For instance, in Leviticus chapter 2 verse 13, salt is used in the offerings as a preservative to signify the enduring nature of the covenant with God. Purification is a key concept when dealing with negative spiritual forces, suggesting that using salt might be seen as a way to cleanse spaces or objects of harmful influences. Protection against evil. Salt is also associated with protection in various cultures. In the Bible, while there are no direct instructions about using salt against black magic, its protective symbolism can be linked to the broader concept of seeking divine protection. This could be extended to using salt as a symbolic gesture of safeguarding oneself from negative influences. Salt represents the eternal covenant between God and his people. That is according to Numbers chapter 18 verse 19. This covenant implies a divine protection that might be invoked in the face of dark practices. By using salt in rituals or prayers, individuals might be calling upon this covenantal protection to safeguard themselves from malevolent forces. In the Old Testament, purification rituals involved substances like water and salt. Although salt is not directly used against witchcraft, its role in purification rituals suggests that it might be employed to purify an area believed to be tainted by black magic. Using salt as a symbolic act of faith can be seen as aligning with biblical practices. While not prescribed by the Bible, the act of sprinkling salt in an area or using it in prayers can be interpreted as a manifestation of faith and trust in God's protection. Historically, salt has been used in various cultures for protection against evil. This practice may have roots in the biblical symbolism of salt as a preservative and purifier, and thus could be adopted in personal spiritual practices as a form of defense. Jesus used salt as a metaphor in his teachings, stating that his followers are the salt of the earth. That is Matthew chapter 5 verse 13. This metaphorical use underscores the idea of being a positive, purifying influence in the world. Applying this concept, one might view the use of salt as a way to uphold spiritual purity against negative forces. Salt is sometimes used in modern spiritual practices for cleansing spaces and objects. While the Bible does not prescribe this method, the concept of cleansing aligns with biblical ideas of removing impurity, making salt a potential tool for those seeking to purify areas affected by black magic. In some Christian traditions, individuals might use salt to bless or cleanse objects, believing that this act can remove negative energies. This practice draws on the biblical symbolism of salt, but is not directly mentioned in scriptural texts. The practice of using salt in rituals is more a reflection of tradition and personal belief rather than a direct biblical mandate. It serves as a symbolic gesture of invoking purity and divine protection. In biblical times, salt was also associated with healing. That is 2 Kings chapter 2 verse 20-21. This association with healing could be extended metaphorically to the idea of healing spaces or situations afflicted by negative spiritual practices. The idea of salt representing an unbreakable covenant can be seen as a form of spiritual reinforcement. By using salt, individuals might be symbolically reinforcing their commitment to divine protection against malevolent forces. Many cultures have integrated salt into their spiritual practices due to its biblical symbolism. While not biblical per se, these practices often draw on the deep-rooted symbolic meanings found in Scripture. In contemporary spiritual practices, salt is sometimes used in rituals to protect and purify spaces. These practices, while not directly biblical, often draw on the symbolic meanings associated with salt in scripture. Some might use salt in conjunction with prayers to seek protection or purification. This use of salt is symbolic, reflecting a desire to invoke divine assistance rather than a direct biblical instruction. The Bible's references to salt are primarily symbolic, focusing on its role in preserving and purifying. This symbolic use can be interpreted as a metaphor for seeking spiritual protection and purity. While the Bible does not provide specific instructions for using salt against black magic, the efficacy of using symbolic acts like sprinkling salt can be seen as a personal faith practice that aligns with biblical principles of purification and protection. Historically, rituals involving salt have been used to ward off evil spirits and protect against negative influences. These practices reflect a broader understanding of salt's symbolic role rather than direct biblical commands. In biblical contexts, salt symbolizes enduring commitment. Using salt in spiritual practices might be viewed as a way to affirm one's commitment to divine protection and purity. The Bible contains various rituals involving salt, but they primarily focus on purity and covenant. The application of these symbols to modern practices reflects an understanding of their deeper meanings rather than direct instructions. The act of using salt as a means of safeguarding oneself from black magic is more a matter of personal faith and tradition than a biblical mandate. It represents an individual's belief in the power of symbolic acts to invoke divine protection. The use of salt in spiritual practices can be viewed through theological perspectives that emphasize the importance of faith and symbolic acts in seeking protection and purification. In the context of spiritual warfare, salt might be used symbolically to represent the desire to purify and protect oneself from negative influences. This use aligns with biblical principles of seeking divine intervention. The cultural symbolism of salt as a purifier and protector has influenced various spiritual practices. While not directly biblical, these practices draw on the broader symbolic meanings associated with salt. Using salt in personal faith practices can be a way to express one's belief in the power of symbolic acts to invoke spiritual protection and purification, even if not explicitly outlined in the Bible. The practice of using salt against black magic reflects a personal interpretation of biblical symbolism. It underscores the role of faith and symbolic acts in seeking divine protection. In various spiritual traditions, salt is used as a tool for protection and purification. While these practices are not directly biblical, they often draw on the symbolic meanings found in Scripture. For those who incorporate salt into their spiritual practices, it serves as a practical application of biblical symbolism. It represents an individual's effort to seek divine protection and purity. Interpreting biblical symbolism involves understanding the deeper meanings associated with substances like salt. While not explicitly prescribed for dealing with black magic, salt's symbolic role can be applied in personal spiritual practices. Ultimately, the use of salt in dealing with black magic reflects a personal faith in the symbolic power of rituals and practices. It represents an individual's interpretation of biblical symbols in the context of seeking spiritual protection and purification. While the Bible does not provide explicit instructions for using salt to combat black magic or witchcraft, the symbolic significance of salt as a purifier, protector, and representation of divine covenant can be interpreted and applied in modern spiritual practices. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you've learned a thing or two. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you've not done so. Thank you.